All right, today we're going to be going over 10 different blood disorders. Before we dive into the blood disorders themselves, I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands what anemia is, because these blood disorders are going to result in anemia. So anemia is the impairment of the ability of the red blood cells to carry and deliver oxygen to the tissues like it's supposed to, and that's going to result in other problems. And there are three different types of anemia. We've got macrocytic anemia. Macrocytic anemia means that on a red blood smear, the red blood cells are going to be larger than normal. Microcytic anemia, which means that the red blood cells on a red blood smear will be smaller than normal. And normocytic anemia, which is where the red blood cells will be normal sized on a red blood smear. Let's go ahead and dive in. Our very first one that we're going to talk about is megaloblastic anemia. Megaloblastic anemia is a macrocytic anemia, which again means that the red blood cells will be larger than normal. And the reason for that is the cause for megaloblastic anemia is actually impairment of DNA synthesis. When DNA synthesis is impaired, then the stem cells that create red blood cells are able to start the creation of the red blood cell, and the red blood cell grows very large, and it would normally divide, but because DNA cannot be synthesized as it should, the red blood cell doesn't divide, and it just goes into the bloodstream as this large red blood cell. There are two different causes that we know of. The first is a couple of vitamin deficiencies, vitamin B12 and folic acid. Those cause megaloblastic anemia. The other thing that can also cause megaloblastic anemia are drugs, including cancer drugs that impair DNA synthesis. Okay, now let's dive into the next one, thalassemia. Thalassemia is a disorder involving hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is the protein that carries oxygen in the red blood cell. Now, this protein, hemoglobin, has two different types of subunits, and two copies of each of those. The types are alpha and beta. Okay, so it has two copies of the alpha subunit and two copies of the beta subunit. Now, in thalassemia, there is a problem in coding one of those subunits. In alpha thalassemia, the alpha subunit is impaired, and in beta thalassemia, the beta subunit is impaired. And usually the subunits are smaller, and that causes impaired function of the whole hemoglobin unit. All right, the next one is a deficiency, either a deficiency of iron or lead poisoning. Those are also going to cause microcytic anemia, just like thalassemias would. And the reason that iron deficiency causes anemia is because you cannot get that iron into the heme, and that iron is actually what interacts with the oxygen in the hemoglobin. Heme is an important part of hemoglobin, and in the end, you have impaired oxygen carrying. Also, lead poisoning. So lead poisoning blocks ferrochelatase, which is the final step to create heme, and it also blocks this step right here, ALA dehydratase, which is one of the first steps towards creating heme, which is our oxygen carrying molecule that's an important part of our hemoglobin protein. Okay, so those are our microcytic anemias: thalassemia, iron deficiency, and lead poisoning. Now let's jump on to our normocytic anemias. From here on out, we're going to be talking about normocytic anemias. First of all, we have glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. Glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase is this molecule right here. Now, this is important in what's called the pentose phosphate pathway. The pentose phosphate pathway creates NADPH, which is a deoxidant for our cells, for our red blood cells. So if we have a deficiency in glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase, we do not create enough NADPH. So anything that causes the formation of free radicals will actually disrupt the function of the red blood cells. Glucose 6-phosphate deficiency will result in anemia because of that, hemolytic anemia. Also, we have pyruvate kinase deficiency right here, this molecule. And actually, the reason that this causes anemia is because when you don't have pyruvate kinase, you get a buildup of 2,3-BPG. And 2,3-BPG is a potent inhibitor of the hemoglobin function. Okay, it interacts with hemoglobin, promoting what's called the tense state, and in the tense state, the hemoglobin cannot bind oxygen well. So again, that limits the ability of hemoglobin to carry oxygen. Okay, that's pyruvate kinase deficiency. Next, we have hereditary spherocytosis. Hereditary spherocytosis is caused by a lack of proteins, most notably spectrin, which give the red blood cell this biconcave shape. So when it doesn't have that biconcave shape, it actually gets a spherical shape, which impairs its ability to carry and deliver oxygen to the tissues. Next off, we have sickle cell anemia. Now, sickle cell anemia is actually an issue with hemoglobin here. It causes the hemoglobin to form aggregates, and when they aggregate, that actually changes again the shape of this hemoglobin. It becomes this almost half moon shape, and that again is going to, just like the sphere shape impaired the ability to deliver oxygen, that is also going to impair the ability of the red blood cell to carry and deliver oxygen. Next off, we have autoimmune hemolytic anemia. Autoimmune hemolytic anemia, there are two types. Both, it's warm and cold, okay? And both types are creating antibodies that actually attack your hemoglobin. And so that impairs the ability to deliver oxygen to the tissues. The cold type of note is that it's actually most effective in the extremities of your body because of your core temperature actually impairs the interaction of that antibody with your red blood cell. Okay. Next off, we have aplastic anemia. Aplastic anemia is actually when you have anemia that's caused by loss of bone marrow. When you don't have enough bone marrow, you aren't able to make enough red blood cells, and that results in anemia. And now the last thing I wanted to talk about today were porphyrias. And porphyrias are actually caused by problems with heme synthesis, okay? And there are lots of different types of porphyrias, but really I just wanted in this video to talk about the two different types of porphyrias. First, we have hepatic porphyria, and then we have hematopoietic porphyrias, okay? Erythropoietic porphyrias, excuse me. So hepatic porphyrias are problems with any of these enzymes in the liver, and erythropoietic porphyrias are problems with those enzymes that are found in the red blood cell. Okay, I made a note on here, if you can see it, sideroblastic anemia, hereditary coproporphyria, congenital erythropoietic porphyria, and erythropoietic protoporphyria. Those are the ones that are going to be found in the red blood cells and cause the anemia. The hepatic porphyrias will not cause anemia like those ones will. Notably, porphyrias are also going to cause things like neuropathies, neuralgias, central nervous system. A really interesting porphyria is this acute intermittent porphyria. It's often brought on by drug use and misdiagnosed as a psychotic disorder. But that's about it that I wanted to say on porphyrias for now. Just a couple of other things to make mention of. Other things that will cause anemia are chronic diseases. Those are going to affect your red blood cell production. and leukemias as well, cancer of the blood. Those are also going to affect the ability of your red blood cells to deliver oxygen to the tissues. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching.